Hello, I'm Chiranjib Sengupta, and you're with me on the Energy Connects podcast. This episode is part of our ongoing coverage of the impact of the Middle East conflict on global energy markets. We are approaching the end of March, and it's been a month that will shape the foreseeable future of energy. With the Strait of Hormuz facing an unprecedented lockdown and Brent crude swinging around $40 of volatility in a single day, the world is now laser focused on energy resilience, where the demand for every molecule and every electron is a matter of not just energy security, but also national security. In today's episode, we therefore examine the resilience playbook. How do we secure the world's most critical maritime choke points, and what does new normal look like for global markets that are now operating under a security-first mandate? To discuss this and a lot more, I am joined today by someone who has spent decades at the center of the global energy dialogue. My guest today is the former Secretary General of the International Energy Forum and currently the President and CEO of the Global Center for Energy Analysis, Joe McMonigle. Joe, thank you so much for joining us on the Energy Connects podcast.
Yeah, great to join you here from CERAWeek.
Thank you. To start off, the extraordinary situation that we are in, and we were discussing this over the past couple of days. How do you see the current volatility in energy markets contributing to the whole conversation about energy security in the long term? And how do you see the whole definition of energy security changing?
Yeah, so I think energy security was already becoming an increasingly important focus for energy markets, for policymakers, for stakeholders. And I think that's just becoming even more clear now as a result of uh, the military confrontation in Iran, and now that's like spread to the Gulf. And so I think you know the unthinkable has really happened. The closing or the threat of attacks has closed the Strait of Hormuz, and that's really brought into focus, what we all viewed as, a big choke point for supply, and in particular for um, the Gulf region, and a lot of OPEC producers. So there's a lot at play here. Um, I do think one of the big takeaways from this in terms of energy security moving forward is the topic of resiliency. But first of all, from an energy security standpoint, the strait has to be opened, or the threat of, confrontation has to be removed. I don't think any of the Gulf countries would accept Iran playing like a toll booth operator in the Strait of Hormuz, where you have to pay a fee to exit out of. So, from an energy security standpoint, that is a very practical, uh, issue that has to be addressed, and whether that's going to be militarily or through diplomatic negotiations, it comes to an end. Whichever route it takes, it has to happen very soon because the oil prices are going to keep rising. It's not just from a price standpoint, but it's availability of supply and also to products too, and in different parts of the world. And yes, prices will be high in places like the United States and Europe, but we could start seeing shortages of products like diesel and jet fuel. And also different parts of the world are going to be disproportionately affected. The global south, Southeast Asia, where most of this oil is heading from the Gulf, and so this is we're being reminded the markets are very global in nature, and and just reinforcing that the world really runs on hydrocarbons still. But the other big, I think, longer term um, uh, focus of energy security is going to be in the topic of resiliency. Traditionally, we've thought of resiliency in terms of, um, climate change? Can we make our, infrastructure more resilient to effects of climate change? And that's still very important. I think we shouldn't take our eye off of that ball. But um, again, from a more practical standpoint, we're kind of moving from theoretical discussion of resiliency to a more real world imperative here. And so, I think the Gulf region, which this is mostly affecting right now, um, are very resilient countries. So I have no doubt that they will be able to come back from this situation. But they have also taken steps to prepare for these types of scenarios. And a couple of examples are, the East-West pipeline in Saudi Arabia that, until about 10 days ago was really just storage for Saudi crude, only about 1 million barrels. And now it's become a 7 million barrel a day throughput for crude to go around the strait to the Red Sea and then go to markets from there. Similarly, the UAE has a pipeline that they have built to avoid the strait. It's a much smaller pipeline, but still, at the time that it was built, it was viewed as being unnecessary, and now it's helping the UAE to get about 1.5 million barrels around the strait. So both of these examples, I think, have shown long-term planning. Um, a lot of attention to resiliency. And again, you know, as we look at oil markets in particular, leadership in terms of managing oil markets. Qatar is a little different story because they are being very much affected. There's no way to get their LNG out. There's no alternative routes. So they are very effective. And of course, there was damage to a facility that they have that would take years to repair to get back online. So I think maybe they will be thinking about similar resiliency steps, and maybe other countries in the region the same approach. But as we look broader in the world, I mean, the China, for example, has built. Of course, they're doing a lot on clean energy tech and a real leader in clean energy tech. But also, one of the things that's kind of impacted oil markets over the last several years has been the Chinese building their strategic petroleum reserves. While we don't know, how big they are, we think they're about 1 billion barrels. 1 billion with commercial stocks, it's maybe 1.6 billion barrels, which is a lot of storage, and it can really help not just China weather this situation, but also really help global markets as well. So it's another case where a country has taken, looked at vulnerabilities and decided, they needed to build some resiliency. And so I think one of the big key takeaways for me that I think policymakers and governments and companies will take away is needing to build in these types of measures. Whether it's on the LNG side, it's storage of natural gas that could help a lot. And oil, as we've learned, doesn't really have alternatives. LNG, it's a really important global market, but you can substitute coal for LNG, and so that's something that we need to watch. Could be because I do think prices, particularly in Asia, are going to get so high, they'll be priced out of the market, and be from a security of supply imperative, they'll be looking at coal. And China is probably also going to be involved in that approach as well. So there's a lot to take away, but I think to answer your question, to summarize, really is, I think, resiliency is going to be now a very key component of energy security. And also, energy security traditionally has been viewed as sort of a price security. And now we might see some disconnect, I think, between energy security and price and cost, because now I think countries are realizing, um, maybe cost isn't such a big. Maybe we might have to spend more to have security of supply and energy security. So I think there's a lot of key takeaways. Hopefully, we'll be able to spend a lot of time thinking about that once this is over. But right now, we have to focus on the main one, which is opening the strait and getting supply moving again, both of oil and LNG.
I think a lot of excellent points there, Joe. And when you talk about resiliency, and you also mentioned the SPR, I think we've seen a historic sort of 400 million barrels commitment there. Um, but then eventually, how do you see all of these reshaping the let's say the supply chains? And how do countries and communities and companies build resilience in those areas?
I think countries, every country has its own way of replenishing the stockpiles. And for example, the U.S. Energy Secretary here has talked about a swap. So next year, the supplies that they're releasing will be resupplied at a greater rate to the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And other countries probably have different approaches, but I do think this situation really underscores the really important need for taking these stockpiles seriously and what the purpose is for. I mean, I really think it's irresponsible to use them as it was done, especially in the U.S. The after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, to use it because there were no supplies that were affected. There were no shortage of supplies as a result of that situation, and but we still released strategic reserves for price purposes, not for security of supply purposes. And so, I think I'm hoping, there's that's kind of a bipartisan thing here in the U.S. I'm not just pointing the fingers at one political party here, but I think uh, all policymakers and all countries have to view these stockpiles as really necessary as an emergency backstop. And similarly, I think the IEA needs to really get back to their roots and focus on this as being one of their main purposes, one of their main mandates. I was, as you know, when I worked in the U.S. government, I was the vice chairman of the IEA governing board. And one of the things we used to do back, this is in 2002, 2003 period, we would do these tabletop exercises. What do you do if there's a displacement? And, what are the steps taken? What are the thresholds to have a coordinated response or individual country? And that was the main focus of the IEA in those years. Of course, the IA is focused on the transition, and that's become a little bit controversial. So, I hope it underscores how important the original mandate of the IA is for this purpose of emergency stockpile, coordinated releases, ensuring that member countries have these stockpiles. Because if you're a member of the IA, this is the main central reason for joining. It's not to get together to talk about energy transition policies or net zero scenarios. It's about what happens when we have a reduction of supplies and security of supply. And the IA seems to be getting back on track, and I hope that direction continues. But you're right. I mean, we were, really the U.S. reserves is actually going to be very depleted after this release. And I think the U.S. government in particular is looking at all the various measures they can take, but at the end of the day, they're really just mitigation measures. They're not really having that big of an impact on prices. And what really is going to change that is nothing to do with energy policy decisions. It's really military decisions, opening up or diplomatic solutions to resolve the situation in the Strait.
And I think we were also discussing about how, how the scope of the conflict and how it could potentially widen the whole definition of energy security to include, like what you said just now, physical security. And how do you see that, as from your point of view? You mentioned from your time at the DOE, and then also, being the vice chairman of IEA. From a policy perspective, how do you see that playing out?
Yes, well, resiliency is also going to include making sure you can protect your energy assets, your existing energy assets, not just planning alternative routes, which I think is going to be important. And even if there's big price tags attached to that, I think that definitely will happen. But yes, being able to protect your key energy infrastructure assets, key uh, 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 points in your energy supply chains. I think that's going to be really important. And also, let's not forget also, because you're seeing this now in the warfare part of it, the sort of cyber warfare, will also cybersecurity for energy facilities and energy companies and other big infrastructure like water and desalinization. And because we're all in this connected world, and so I think cybersecurity is kind of taken a little bit of a back seat, but I think this is going to actually renew a priority focus for the sector here. I think because cyber is just as an important a threat as drones, coming to do damage on energy facilities.
Absolutely. And then, Joe, finally, the whole narrative that we've been discussing for the past couple of years about energy addition, uh, and then adding more in terms of, energy, both from the supply side as well as sources. How do you see that vis-a-vis the need for diversification as well?
Yeah, I think this is critical, and really compliments go to Dr. Sultan for focusing everybody on this idea of energy addition. And I think it's becoming clear we live. I mean, it's already been, I think, because of AI and digital compute, necessary that we increase all supplies. The whole all of the above type of strategy, but really, we have to find ways to provide more energy supplies, and that also includes clean energy, and because we need all forms of energy. Now we have a shortage of gas turbines because of the demand for, and really created from AI that's affecting power demand. But we do have other ways of producing energy through wind and solar, and also looking at different kind of storage type of technologies. And so I think we need to focus on again raising supplies of all forms of energy, because it takes pressure off of different parts of the energy sector. Um, and also realize that these all of these energy supplies, there are individual supply chains attached to them as well. So, for example, if the strait were to open tomorrow and this thing were to be, resolved, shutting fields and the whole process of turning off production, it takes a while to get back online. And of course, you can't. The strait is very narrow, as we're all learning. So there's not massive, ship traffic. You have to do it like sort of one at a time, and only so many transfers per day. So this is going to take 3 or 4 months to unwind, and so I think that part is also important. But I agree with you. I think it's energy addition, adding more forms of energy, and also keeping our eye on what are the big um, potential clean energy technologies that are very close to development or commercialization. What do we need to do to fast track those? and maybe have a little bit more of a prioritization of these clean energy technologies, ones that can be deployed quicker if they just had some more support, either from the investment community or from government. So I think it's really important.
Joe, it's always such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for your excellent insights and for joining us on the Energy Connects podcast.
Thanks. Great to be with you.
That was Joe McMonigle, President and CEO of the Global Center for Energy Analysis, discussing the impact of the Middle East conflict on global energy flows and markets. Thanks for joining us for this special episode of the Energy Connects podcast. And you can go to energyconnects.com for our rolling coverage on the Middle East conflict. Don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe to our newsletter for regular updates. A big thank you to also our amazing production team working behind the scenes to bring these episodes to you. Thank you, and I'll see you again soon in the next episode of the Energy Connects podcast.